So this guy was sentenced to 15 years in prison, I believe, and for vehicular homicide and manslaughter. But unfortunately, he got out of prison like 2 years later. So he only served like 2 years, which is absolutely crazy. Like I remember when we got the word that he's out of prison, you were just dumbfounded. You're like, you kill someone and then you get 2 years. Like, how does that even happen? I don't know, why he got out as early as he did, but one of the things that I've learned in life is that you can't hang on to the things that you can't control. So this was one of those things that we couldn't control, and one of the things that the Amish are actually really good at doing is forgiving and moving on. And so sometimes to a fault, I'm not saying to a fault in forgiving, but like they're so forgiving that they'll allow people to get away with things that they shouldn't. But this was one of those cases that you had to move on. And I do remember after I left, that happened in 1998, and I was 13, and then I left when I was 19. And it took me a few years to realize that I really hadn't dealt with the grief in a healthy manner. And so I had to go through my own stage of forgiveness for the guy, because I realized that we didn't have therapy, we didn't have any kind of counseling or anything, like any kind of grief counseling or anything like that. It was kind of like, hey, you talk about it, you cry, you grieve, and we're there for each other to talk about it. But it was more or less like, okay, now you move on. And that's just part of life. And then the other part too is like, it's when you're going through a loss where you lose someone, it's the very, very difficult part of that is when it feels like the rest of the world has moved on and you feel like you are at a standstill. And it feels like everybody else has forgotten that you just lost your dad. And for the longest time, I would say probably like 6 months to a year after he passed, I was afraid to let people know that I could be happy. I was afraid to smile. I was afraid to laugh, because I was afraid that if I were to smile or laugh, that people would think that I forgot about my dad and that he was gone and that I wasn't grieving anymore. In fact, I remember there were times, probably a year or so after he had passed, and I just remember sitting at a dinner table and all the kids were, sitting around the table as usual, and we're like talking and having a good time and laughing. And it felt so uncomfortable in a sense because he wasn't there. And my mom actually kind of like hushed everybody down. And here's why. Not because she didn't want us to have fun, but I know it was because she felt like, hey, if we're happy and things are going well, something else bad is going to happen. So grief is such a interesting thing to deal with, and everybody goes through it differently. But one of the things that I do want to let you know is you have to allow yourself to feel it. So after I left, a few years after I had left, I had to go through a stage of feeling it again and allowing myself to feel it in a completely different way than what it was when I was still at home, because I realized that there were a lot of the ways that I had dealt with it at home was shoving all those feelings down and putting all the grief in a little box and sticking it away. And at some point that's going to come out in some way, shape, or form, and I had to learn how to work through that. So if you are someone that is going through something like that, just know that you are never alone, and that there are a lot of people that have gone through it or are going through it. I will say that sometimes just if you know someone that is going through something like that, where they've lost someone, allowing them and letting them know that you are there for them and that you care for them and that you love them is of most importance. But trying to fix it or letting them know or trying to tell them that you know what they are feeling, sometimes that's not the right thing to do. Like, I remember when I was in that stage and someone would come up to me and be like, I know what you're feeling and I know what you're going through. And if I knew that they had never lost their dad, I didn't even hear a word they were saying. But as soon as I talked to someone that I knew they had lost a parent or someone that was really close to them, I was all ears and I could feel it and it mattered. But anybody else, if they told me that they knew what I was going through and they felt for me, and I was like, you know, you just don't understand. That was my experience. I'm not saying it is like that for everybody, but just letting people know that you are there for them is the utmost important part, but without feeling like you have to fix it for them. You just have to be sometimes. This is something that I forgot that I had until about a month ago. I was going through my stuff, and this is a whole paper that my mom wrote on the experience and the whole process of my dad, and from the evening that the accident happened all the way through the funeral. And I think this chapter actually got published in a book that is like in the Amish community. And then they put in like the names of some of the people, not everybody, but some of the people that showed up for the funeral. So that was really cool to see. So anyway, sometimes I will go back and read this. And the saddest part about this is that my mom signed this as only a lonely mother. My mom never remarried. She never wanted to remarry. I know that she had opportunities to remarry, but I know for a fact that my parents had true love. I 100% know that. And my mom said that she would not be able to remarry and bring in a stepdad with that many kids there, because she's like, it never really goes well. So she didn't want to put that on the kids. But I've told her before, I said, listen, like, you're allowed to remarry if you want to. Like, if you don't need to, you don't need to grow old by yourself and be lonely. But I have a Down syndrome sister, and she lives at home with her and their best friends, and I don't think my mom will ever remarry, and that's okay.